Hello, and welcome back to zinstake, your new favorite podcast. We'll start with a disclaimer this week. Nothing you hear is financial advice. We're not registered financial advisors. All of your money is your responsibility. And please don't do anything I say. Also, if you hear anything on the podcast that you don't agree with or you don't like, please just turn it off. This isn't meant to offend anybody or to upset anybody. We're just here to tell you the news and show you our opinion on it. That's all. Moving on, we will start with the weather. Listener Vincent requested Niamey in Niger. It is actually sunny all day in Niamey. Highs of 37, lows of 19 into the night. Nice and balmy. You're definitely going to get a suntan if you go out there. Moving on to San Diego in the U.S. Also sunny all day, just nothing but sunshine all around. Highs of 17, lows of 6 degrees. Also, if you didn't listen to the last week's podcast, please remember that all temperature and weather is described in Celsius. So again, for you lovely Fahrenheit people, I'm sorry. Moving on, last place is Mumbai in India. Also sunny all day, trifecta. Nothing but sunshine for people over at Mumbai. And you have highs of 32, lows of 23 degrees. Now, starting with the news of the day. All right, so we got Yahoo Finance. Jeff Bezos sells roughly $2 billion worth of Amazon shares. Sold around 12 million shares of the online retail and cloud services firm for about $2 billion. So this is definitely a continuation of our tech bubble story from last week. This is from Yahoo Finance, of course. And on our thoughts for this, I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, you don't sell high, buy low, obviously, right? Jeff Bezos doesn't need the cash on hand. So clearly he's getting out. It looks like he's getting out while the getting out's good, right? This is the type of thing you're going to want to do when you think things are at a high. Now, if someone like Jeff Bezos, who owns a large section of Amazon, started from the ground up, if he's selling $2 billion worth of his own shares of a company that he considers his baby, maybe you should too. And of course we have, money is leaving the system. Things will start to dry up over on the markets. At least that's what most people think. We have this impending market crash since 2018, 2019. So, the calls are out for a crash for sure. And if anything's going to crash first, it's definitely going to be tech. Moving on, Business Insider. China is facing the U.S. financial crisis on steroids as its real estate market collapses. Kyle Bass says, he's a hedge fund director, the stress has been reflected in Chinese markets, which have lost about $7 trillion since 2021. So China is facing a huge crisis over there. Evergrande is finally kaput. Things are rough. And let's be honest here, guys. The average Chinese person is not getting any younger, and they are not bringing in new young people to fill any of those spots. So could the Chinese economy contract? Their market definitely is contracting. We'll see. It's hard to say what's going on in China. A lot of the numbers are skewed. They're cloudy. They're muddy. They're changed. No one really knows what's going on in there. What we do know is that if we were listening from last week, we were talking about a mortgage sell-off. China they had a lockdown much longer than the rest of us did. So if their economy isn't contracting, it's a bit of a surprise, to be perfectly honest. Also, there's always going to be fears that if China goes, if they start having a financial crisis or a collapse, we are deeply globalized. What happens to one of us happens to all of us. China is the workhorse, the manufacturing hub of the entire world. Now, do I think that China's going to go down like a domino, and then it's going to be a big domino effect to the rest of the world? I don't think so. Not yet, anyway. And if it does, honestly, I think it'll be fine. I don't think it's as bad as people make it sound. There's been lots of recessions that happen outside of North America, or only inside of North America, or only inside of Europe, or only inside of China. Anything's possible. For now, I think we take it by ear and just see how things go. So a continuing story from last week, Al Jazeera. Defiant Houthis claim fresh Red Sea attacks on U.S. and U.K. ships. Latest attacks on civilian ships demonstrate the Iran-backed group's determination to continue its campaign. The ongoing campaign is helping to stoke simmering tensions across the Middle East, disrupting world trade due to the Red Sea being a major route for container ships. So despite what people might say, this Red Sea thing really affects everyone and everything, right? You might want to think in your mind, it won't affect me because I buy locally, or. Well, your phone wasn't made locally. Your car wasn't made locally. Almost nothing is made locally. And anything that is made locally is usually disassembled. The more complicated something gets, the more different factories and places and different parts have to all come together to make whatever it is you want. So if that happens to be a phone or a car, you're talking about up to 20 different factories in multiple different countries. And let me tell you, at some point, one of those container ships are bound to be going through the Red Sea. And if it can't go through there, it's going to take an extra 2 weeks, which means everything will be delayed. Everyone is already starting to feel the heat of this. So we have a little bit higher prices already. And on top of that, almost everything that you order is about a week or so delayed. So we'll see what happens. I mean, we talked about this last week. The Houthis are not giving up. And if anything, these attacks on the Houthis with your fancy Tomahawk missiles are doing nothing but encouraging them to continue their attacks. They're proud of it. They have spokespeople out there bragging about what they're doing. They send the news videos all the time of what they're up to. They're not ashamed of it. And if anything, it makes them more emboldened. So this whole Red Sea crisis is doing nothing but making the Houthis more popular in the news, or infamous. Call it what you want to call it. They're getting a lot of recognition about what they're doing. Everyone's talking about them. They're in the news all the time. This is their absolute best case scenario of what they wanted. Yeah, okay, are they taking some hits here and there? Are they losing some people? Sure. Are they getting the recognition that they've wanted? Are they making the smoke and fire that they desperately wanted to show on the rest of the world? Yes. They are making global issues for all of us. And they are finally getting the recognition that they wanted for it. Now, we talked about this last week. When is this Houthi thing going to end? Most people thought this whole thing was going to blow over in 3 weeks. Most people thought the whole Israel-Gaza thing was going to blow over in 3 weeks. None of it's blowing over. If anything, it's getting more and more hot over in the Middle East. You had Iran and Pakistan exchange some missiles not too long ago. You have U.S. attacks all over Syria and Iraq. They're, back and forth with the militants that are in that area. We'll see. If anything, I think it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. At least that's zinstake. In other news, Financial Post reports lithium miners tried to hold on as prices slump. Lithium prices falling. Lithium market is known to be volatile due to, apparently, rising demand. Well, if demand is rising so fast, why are lithium miners trying to hold on? And why are prices falling? I mean, is it a bit of manipulation? Maybe. According to carboncredits.com, the current decline in lithium prices can be primarily attributed to the slowing growth of electric vehicle sales in China. This is coupled with the broader slowdown in the Chinese economy. So, I mean, we've talked about this before. EV sales are not what people thought they were going to be. Everyone during the pandemic thought EV is the future when they had their free money from the government and they had all their tax breaks and low interest rates. You saw Teslas and all sorts of vehicles, EV-wise, everywhere. All of a sudden, nobody wants them anymore, at least not enough to support poor old lithium miners. Now, here at this podcast, you know that we do believe in the commodity super cycle. And eventually, these miners will be hopefully making a killing. We're not quite there yet. And right now, we have nothing but people slowing down and suffering, miners-wise. A lot of mining companies around the world are suffering. Everything from regulations, especially green regulations, making it hard. I mean, of course, your average green person wants a fancy electric car and wants electric everything and a greater electric grid, but they don't want the minerals mined out of the ground in order to make them. So they get upset and they push their governments to have regulations in order to slow down mining. And miners do not get any of the love that they so rightly deserve. And of course, they're suffering right now. For the time being, we'll see what happens eventually with the coming super cycle. We do believe miners will pop off. In the meantime, they are suffering, which does mean, buy low, sell high, guys. If this is something you believe in, again, not advice, but if you believe in it, do what you believe in. Now, moving on into other news. Ukraine, Bloomberg reports Ukraine mulls contingency plan to keep IMF funds flowing if U.S. aid stalls. Ukraine considering plan to plug a hole in its budget in a bid to secure money from the IMF. So it's already coming to the point where poor old Ukraine is starting to realize that less and less people care about their war. They might have to give up a few provinces, right? They're not going to have to give up all of Ukraine, probably. And people do not feel that as long as, you know what I mean? Like those Russian-speaking provinces, I don't think that everyone else in the world cares about them as much as Ukraine does. And the money is starting to slow down. Even in Europe, where people are supposed to care the most, they don't as much as they do. They don't as much as they do anywhere. And poor Ukraine is starting to try to figure out other ways to keep their funding going. And here's the thing. Nobody funds Russia. So if Ukraine doesn't get their funding, they're not going to make it very much longer. They're going to have to go to the table and they're going to have to call uncle. They're going to have to make deals. And that's not something people like Zelensky want to do. Whether or not it's right or wrong, at the end of the day, Ukraine isn't going to make it without those funds. And if they don't get them, we might see the war go, finish. Again, we do have elections coming around, especially U.S. elections in the fall. Donald Trump's already said he'd be willing to make peace over this war. So we'll see if there is a timeline or a time limit to the war. For the meantime, it doesn't seem like Ukraine's going to do anything more than what they're already doing, which is slowly getting attrited and holding on as best they can. In other news, Financial Post reports Bank of Canada believes interest rates need more time to work. Bank of Canada believes current interest rates are high enough to bring inflation under control. So what's that mean? That means that the Bank of Canada likes the interest rates where they are. They're not going to raise them, but they're certainly not going to lower them. Now, these banks, these central banks, they like to tell you what they're going to do 20 times, 10 times before they actually do it. That's because they like to change their mind while they're telling you, or they like to tease you, make you think this will happen, that will happen. And then, they like to tell you what they're going to do 3-4 times, and then they really do it. And let's be honest with ourselves, guys. There is nothing but inflation coming around town all the time. Everyone complains about the prices increasing on them constantly. The prices themselves are very, very high. Cost of living is extreme these days. If the Bank of Canada didn't believe interest rates needed more time, you would be worried. As things progress, though, they definitely need to take more and more of this loaned money that they've created into the system out of the system. They know that. We know that. Everyone knows that. Everyone except people who want cheaper mortgage rates tomorrow in order to inflate prices. This is literally what that is. Just remember that. All those people that talk about lower interest rates all the time, what they're really saying is, I want cheaper loans in order to inflate prices so that my assets become more and more dollar amounts or euro amounts, whatever it is. They want more and more higher prices. That's why those people that want lower interest rates want lower interest rates. Just remember that. Now, the Bank of Canada knows this, and the Bank of Canada also knows that most people in Canada are either suffering or they do not enjoy the higher rates or the higher prices, sorry. And if anything, they want lower prices. Now, you're never going to say, you're never going to really get lower prices, especially with our economy and our society and the way our governments are run. But at the very least, you're going to want them to stop going up. At least that's zinstake. That's zinstake for you guys. Okay, moving on. Financial Post. Canada Nickel. It's a company. Canada Nickel Company, Inc. Looking for government funding, partners to build EV supply chain plants. Canada Nickel Inc. Company says its plans to build North America's largest nickel, or it plans to build North America's largest nickel processing facility. Will their stock increase? They need about $1 billion USD to complete the project. Will they get the funding? God only knows. In the meantime, this goes right back to our commodity super cycle bet. Nickel, if you are familiar with nickel and you remember a few years back, we had the nickel short squeeze because of Russia, who makes about 4% of all the nickel, then you know that if things continue the way they're going with demand, which you never know, then we will need a lot more nickel. And we're not making a lot more nickel. As we were talking about earlier, miners are suffering right now. If Canada Nickel Inc. Company, Inc., right, if these people do get their $1 billion USD, how long is it going to take for them to build a mine? How long is it going to take for them to build processing plants? How long is it going to take for them to get all that nickel to market? Probably between 5 to 10 years. In 5 to 10 years, if demand picks up or just keeps going on the rate it's going, there's not going to be enough nickel for everyone that wants it. So, I mean, a lot of people do believe in this super cycle. We talk about it all the time. If Canada Nickel Inc. Company, if they get what they want, great. If not, we'll see. I mean, there is less and less demand for EV, but there's always more and more demand for cars, computers, and everything else. In related news, Yahoo Finance reports Tesla temporarily slashes prices for Model Y cars in the US. Tesla slashed prices of its Model Y cars in Germany. Production at the Berlin factory was suspended due to lack of components after attacks in the, wait for it, Red Sea. Tesla warns of notable lower sales growth this year. So not only is Tesla suffering from the Red Sea issue, like we just talked about this earlier. Anything that's complicated to make, you get lots of different parts from lots of different places. Chances are some of that stuff's going to go through the Red Sea and you are going to be delayed. This is exactly what Tesla's going through right now. Production's getting suspended over there. They're slashing prices, but not because of production getting suspended. They are slashing prices because they're not getting the sales that they want. Tesla is not the mega magical car company that's going to beat out everyone that you've known for the last 100 years, like Toyota, Ford, and Honda. That's not going to happen. It was never going to happen. And for all you people that thought that Tesla was going to be the new big best thing, it doesn't happen that way. It doesn't happen that quickly. If things take a long time, and EV, whether or not you want to think that's the future, that's fine. At least for right now, not enough people want them for these EV companies to have growth. And a lot of companies are already suffering from that, especially a company that only makes EV vehicles. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think Tesla's going to file for Chapter 11 tomorrow, but it could. And this is the thing. I talked to some of my friends about this, and they're so wild about the idea that Tesla could file for Chapter 11. Oh my God, what do you mean? It's not going to go bankrupt. It can. This is a new company. It came out, 10, 20 years ago? Not that long. They've only picked up steam in the last 5 or 6 years. Things went a little haywire when all that money was being put in the system, and a lot of people put it in Tesla. Okay, a lot of people believed in it. Now they're way down from their highs, and I don't think Tesla's going anywhere personally. We'll see in the meantime, though. They're definitely not making as much money as they like, so we'll see. In other news, BBC reports that European farmers ramp up protests. Roadblocks in Poland, Hungary, Spain, and Belgium, and others. There's tractor protests and everything else. So continuing on from last week, people, especially farmers in the EU, not getting the love that they deserve, are getting really upset. And they're all over the streets being upset about it. Now, here's the thing. It's not summer yet. It's not what the Europeans call protest season. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. They have an actual season just for protests. And we're not even there yet. And when we get there, what do you think is going to happen? And on top of that, there's elections coming up around the corner for all sorts of different countries. We'll see how things progress. In the meantime, Europeans are real upset with their governments. And once the coming elections do come around the corner, Zin's take is that you're definitely going to see a lot of different faces with a lot of different beliefs saying a lot of different things. I don't think that any of the politicians that support at least, the majority of the things that they do support out there are going to be in government in the next year or two. In the next 2 years, we have all sorts of elections coming around. Here at zinstake, we do not believe that the lovely and wonderful government ministers all over the EU doing all the fun things that they're doing are going to make it. I mean, let's be real here, guys. The EU's in recession. The EU's been in recession for a long time. And on top of that, they have serious inflation over there. You have Germany losing its status. You have France, Belgium, Spain, all these people having higher and higher cost of living. I mean, they're calling it a cost of living crisis. Governments will change. Mark my words, governments will change. Anyway, that's it for Zin's Take this week. We're really grateful for you listening, gentle listener. And for all of you writing in and messaging us, thank you for all the support. It's nothing but love out there, and I really appreciate that from everyone that chooses to write in. Also, if you wanted your town or city mentioned in next week's weather report, please email us at zinstake@gmail.com. Same thing goes for any news articles or reports that you want to have featured in the show. If you feel that something is missing or you just want to say thanks for the information, please email us at zinstake@gmail.com. That is ZINSTAKE@gmail.com. And lastly, if you liked what you listened to, please like, share, and subscribe. Share with a friend. Tell them how much you enjoy it. And don't forget, you're great just the way you are. We'll see you next week.